It's a pleasure, it's a privilege, and hopefully that we could engage in a meaningful conversation. So tonight I'm going to talk about the Republican Party and the Asian American voters. Probably you noticed that in the last presidential election, Obama won because what they call the politics of demographics. Heard that term? Mm-hmm. Yes. The white voters are pretty much split, right? And then, of course, the African American is close to 80 to 90%. I mean, that's identity politics. That's another new word we learned. But what is very interesting is the Asian American vote for Obama. Guess how many percent? 73 to 26. It is a 47% gap. Now, think of this, that in 1992, George Bush was running for president. It was much more for George Bush. It was like 60 to 40%. So why this turnaround? What is wrong with branding? Tonight we are going to explore some reasons, some cultural reasons behind that, and hopefully come to a solution, or see whether how we could win this group back. Sounds good idea? Yeah. Now, it's strange in my family that when I go to the voting booth with my daughter, which we do every 2 years or 4 years, then we'll compare notes on who we vote for. At the end of the night, it is a cross-out. Everything that I vote for is Republican, and everything she votes for is Democrat. So it basically says that there's no reason why we both of us go down there. You just cross each other out.
Yeah, leave her alone.
Also, to let you know, Asia is a big continent in size and concept. So even today, when the demographics is talking about Asian American, it's basically talking about 19 countries rather than the rest of them. Because those are the ones that came to America, become citizens, and have a right to vote. Now, why is it important for me each time that when I go to vote with my daughter, I ask her to take me a picture. And then I send it to my friends in mainland China and say, I got something in my hand that 1.3 billion of you do not have.
That's right.
A ballot to choose the President of the United States. It's a privilege, it's a duty, and let us not forget doing that, all right? Now, what has happened within the last 20 years in America is just sea change. First, we got a minority president, but it's not only that. It's a new term, what they call minority majority. If you add up all the minority in America, it's going to be more than the majority of the white voters. And in the actual count in the population by the year 2042, it will be more what we call minority groups in America than the Caucasian group. So something is changing. And America is at a crossroad. We face so many problems that we have never faced before. Terrorism is one of them. Extremism is another. And then we never have this kind of national debts. Right now it's what, over 17 trillion? Yeah. And we have between 60 to 70 trillion of unfunded liability in our social security system. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to deal with it. But it's going to be there. So let's talk about Republican Party. First, let me see whether we could have the subgroups that you can identify fit with. Now, I assume most of you are Republicans, right? That may be one of the few reasons why you become Republican Party members. One of them is that you are a social conservative.
Yes.
Am I right? You believe that abortion is wrong. You believe that it's better to get married with one man and one woman.
Yes.
And you believe a strong family. So you believe those strong family values. So that's one main constituent. And probably you are fiscal conservative. You believe Americans should not run up the debts, like using a credit card that they can never repay. And that's what we are facing. At a certain point, America is impossible to repay its debts. The the interest we pay on our debt itself is so huge. So the rest of things that we fight for, all these discretionary income expenses, is meaningless. Well, thirdly is that you might be a religious conservative. You believe that this is a Christian nation or at one point, and you believe in theonomy. Basically, is that the Bible would be the base of the law of the land, even though it's not identical, but at least the spirit is the one that builds the foundation. And you believe in the Puritan heritage. And probably you might believe in the strong military defense.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, okay. That America, the way to be free is to be strong. And the way to be strong is to never have to use your force in the first place.
Sure.
Now, Mike didn't explain to you, but I'm a member of Ronald Reagan Presidential Library member for quite a long time. I'm a lifetime Republican Party member. And so every now and then I would drive down to Simi Valley and listen to all those political speech. It's good. Probably as a Republican you believe in free market capitalism. You believe that too much regulation would choke up the business.
Sure.
You believe in limited government intervention in your personal life. And probably you believe in the constitutional in its original intent,
Sure.
that there should not be judicial activism. And the last one is privacy is important to you. You do not want the government to, Rand Paul says
Infringe on your
today,
rights.
that is going to check on your crook and something in your household or whatever. So that's what we are, the Republican parties. So let's talk about who are the Asian Americans. How big are they and what do they want? Number one, Asian American, counting the 15 countries, is 5.3% of the population in America today. And this is the fastest growing minority segment, even faster than the Hispanic.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. And it is the highest income, of course, less than my good Jewish friends. It is said that for every dollar a white American make, the Asian American makes close to $1.40. And of course, the Jewish American makes close to $1.69. Okay.
What a nation.
Okay. Now, the Asian American, there are different subgroups, and the three ones that we are going to discuss about is the North Asia one, Northeast Asia, the China, South Korea, and Japan. That's probably one group. The second group would be the Southeast Asia, the Vietnamese, the Cambodian, the Laotian, the Burmese, Indonesian, and some others. This is a huge group also. And the third one is probably a newer one, is the Asian Indian, the ones that do your computer and answer your phone.
Oh, yeah.
So let me give you a little bit social, cultural backgrounds of the Asian American philosophy and why they seems to at times are attracted to the Democratic Party. So in order to know, to win the war, we need to know who our enemies are. Number one, in the Asian American culture or Asian culture, there's a culture of shame versus culture of sin. Never heard this before? Okay.
Say that again.
Culture of shame, S-H-A-M-E, versus sin.
Shame.
Shame against sin.
Shame.
So if you would ask one of them and says that, what do you think about homosexuality? And this is that, I don't really care, as long as it is not my son. It is totally shameful. And I would not recognize that person as my son anymore. But if anybody wants to do about it, that's their problem. It is shameful for me, but that act is not sinful. Now, if you come from Judeo-Christian ethics, from the Old Testament, you look into Leviticus, and then you look into New Testament in Romans, that homosexuality is a sin.
Sure.
Now, so the social conservatives do not so much appeal to the Asian American mindset in that sense. You have to talk the language of shame rather than sin. Okay, point number one. Point number two, government activism versus pacifism. In the Confucius thought, government is thought to be a good father. You got to respect your father, the government, as like a father. Therefore, it is often like when in small rural villages in China, the tiny government official would go into their household and solve their domestic quarrel between husband and wife. He would say, that's none of your business, government. But they look at government differently. So they want to look at government activism. Number three, communitarian versus rugged individualism. We live in a community. And one of the reasons we do not, Asian Americans do not purchase too many guns is because we believe that you got something in your home, you yell, and your neighbors will come to you. Now, probably that's not what you think over here, you know. So chances are, if you do not protect yourself, then you would not be protected. Number four is pacifism versus strong military. That, especially from the Buddhist background, they believe it's much more live and let live. You know, if you could just get along, doesn't matter. Okay, if you go to Thailand, there's a term called Mai Pranai, which basically means that doesn't matter. You know, you do this, do that, as long as both of us could just coexist. So then kind of this interventionist policy in military is not too much a draw. Number four, 60% of the voters, Asian American voters, are from recent immigrant background. So that's immigrant versus heritage.
How much percent?
60 to 40. Okay, 60 are from immigrant background. So like me, I came in 1978, I'm first generation. So there's a different kind of mindset. It's much more into what is practical rather than what's ideological. Asian American group is the least ideological of any group. They just want to know, show me it works. Show me the money. Right. Number six, they believe in religious pluralism rather than religious exclusivism, because there's way too many religions in Asia. Almost all of the religions have somewhere come from Asia, even Judaism. I don't know whether you consider Israel to be part of Asia, but I think it is. And the last one is equality rather than dominance, that we seek equality. Now, we do not pretty much look for kind of tokenism, or do not look for past redress of grievances or anything, but we are just grateful that we are given the opportunity to be equal here. We can compete on equal ground. So that is the reason why some of them could be leaning, quote unquote, towards Democrats, is because Democrats make use of all these things. They study the culture and say what kind of message would be in tune to these people. Then let's say, what should the Republican Party do? What are the things that they could look into the mindset of the culture and says that probably these are the things that could appeal to you. Number one, social mobility versus survival handouts. Asian Americans, for the most part, do not like handouts. When I first came, in 1978, along with my church people, we have the Vietnamese both people get their housing, get a social security number, go on welfare, whatever. Within a few short years, almost all of them are off the welfare roll. Their kids go to good school, and they study hard. Most of them got scholarship. So that is a tremendous sense of social mobility. Now, this is Republican value. Am I right?
Yeah.
That no matter where you came from, no matter what station of life you are, you work hard, you study hard, eat well vitamins, say your prayer, then you will succeed. I think that's Hulk Hogan said that. Number two, you believe in meritocracy versus favoritism. We do not want affirmative action, no racial quota of any kind. Compete on same equal ground. Now, that's Republican value. Number three, we believe in strong family. We do not want a broken one. One of the challenges of the gay marriage is that civilization could not survive it. Trust me. When you break down the family, civilization collapses.
That's right.
It has been proven times again in history. Number four, we believe in small business ownership. We do not go into unions and demand our rights, otherwise we strike. We believe that if you work hard, pay your tax, and your business will prosper in due time. We believe in entrepreneurship. We believe in a safe neighborhood. They just told me in Santa Clara area, close to San Francisco area, that place is like 60% to 70% Asian American.
Santa Clara?
Santa Clara.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why? Number one reason, the school is good, the neighborhood is safe. And the last one is they believe in a personal wealth creation versus taxation. We save more money percentage-wise than almost any other group. Of course, the Jewish group. And then we invest the money, okay? So basically, maybe we learn it from you. So these are the socio-economic and cultural backgrounds that each group could appeal to. So let's turn on what needs to be done for the Republican Party. Number one, I give you 7 C's, just in case you're writing. Number one, cultural affinity. That they want to feel that they are part of America. Now, you know, recently there's a TV show about Asian American. What's the name?
Off the boat.
Yeah, Fresh Off the Boat. Now, that's a very bad term. And it's basically pretty much referred to the Vietnamese American that came as a refugee fresh off the boat. It's just a pretty much like you say, it's a wetback.
Yeah.
No, every single racial group in America has all these slangs and slurs that is aimed at them. Now, why would they use that term for their show?
Because they're liberals.
They're liberals and they're
That's right.
prejudiced.
And they're prejudiced.
And
And then they want to sell it as if that they are doing a good favor for the Asian American market. This is you are so far, you are nowhere to be counted, so this is the way for you to come in.
But if it was a conservative TV program that put it on, you'd hear about it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So-
So that is what needs to happen. And the second thing is that, first one is cultural affinity. Republican Party need to reach out to the Asian group, which they are doing and are doing more and more. They recognize that they cannot win elections from now until eternity if they neglect any group in America today. That's the reality. The politics of demographics is a pure science. You cannot have any group voting 70-something%. It's almost, they almost look black now. I mean, the identity politics. Number two, core values. What are the core values that we have that makes America great? That we believe not only makes America great, but like Lincoln, we believe that's the hope for mankind. That this is something that could be reproduced everywhere because it's built on a good, solid foundation of good virtues, good civic virtues. Number 3, we need good candidates. Now, Reagan was good. When he came along, people laughed at him. People think he was old, and you know, he was not as intelligent. You heard that.
Because he was an actor.
Yeah, he was an actor. Now, a B-class actor. And what happened was that, I believe, that he attracted people, competent people, because of the bedrock of core values.
Yes.
And the people are attracted to that and says that, wow, then people starting to contribute more and more to the ideas and makes it work. He took a lot of chances, but he bankrupted the Soviet Union, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Right? He changed the world. Number 4, the content of platform. The platform for the Republican Party must be reflective the new realities of America today. Number 5, it has to be a better communication. Now, probably most of you.
Can we interrupt while you're going through? Like you, number 4, what do you mean? What do you give me some
Content
examples?
of the platform.
Yeah,
Yeah.
examples.
For example, you need to reflect the values that both sides find a commonality. I just mentioned to you there are 7 core values that could attract to them. The social mobility, the meritocracy,
Right.
the strong family, small business ownership, entrepreneurship, and safe neighborhood and personal wealth creation. So if you have programs that communicate these ideas, then people are going to be attracted to it.
But didn't they have that in kind of the last election? They kind of, that was their platform, but it didn't work.
Well, elections has so many components. So I'm just breaking it down all the
Right.
seeds, from the core values to the platforms and to the communication. Now, when was the last time you see the Republican Party goes into the Chinese American market and do the advertising and says that if you need voter registration drive or you need this, then we'll be there for you? No.
I just heard a big deal on the young guy that's
Rand Paul.
through Rand Paul today, this
Right.
morning. They said, he's been going into all the black universities and speaking and everything.
Right. Right. So they need to come to different segments of society. 6, chief concerns. What are the 3 most important concerns that the Asian American have? Number 1, education. That's number 1. Now you have heard that spelling bee competition every year. It is the Indian kid that win it, and there's no way out of that. Nobody can beat them.
With education, the Democrats say we're going to spend more and more money,
Yeah.
and that's very appealing. How do you get around that?
Well, tell them that education is the quality, not the quantity.
No, I understand what our arguments are, but I'm saying is that going to resonate? Most of the Asians I know that it's not nuanced. If they're spending more money on education, then it's good. And that's a tough hurdle to, they don't get into all the, they just know you need to spend more money from their point of view.
And quite honestly, the Spanish community is those same core values that the Asians have. You know, if you really look at it, they're conservative, but they vote Democratic.
You raise a very, very vital question, Mike. Is when you are looking at those concerns and say, what are the solutions? The Democrats, the first response is, let's throw more money at the problems. And Republicans says, no, look at the reason behind that and see whether we could do a better job in raising our kids in education. And that's what an Asian American is demanding, is not you throw money at us. It is that you allow us for the best people to excel in education in America. And by the way, the American index in the world standing is going down every year. Okay. Let me get this and then we'll get to your question and answer if you want. And then the last one is the change in the perception, prejudice, and presumption. Now, if you do not know an Asian American, you never invite them to your home, or you never go to their house, chances are there's a lot of things you do not know about them. And prejudice just builds up. Stereotypes just build in, and it gets worse and worse. So probably let's start the change now. Let us get to know one another as people. People with dreams and hopes and aspirations. And people with the common needs and problems go through every day, wondering whether their job will be there to help them out. And by building this commonality, then we come back to what we try to achieve together as Americans. That there's a common goal, a common destiny. And hopefully, Asian American will play a great part in it. We will take up our duty as citizens, and we will contribute the best we can. Thank you. Oh, you want to ask questions? Okay.
Yeah. The first thing is, all kidding aside, the Republican Party should hire you to go around and do this seriously. Because if there are any Asians doing this, I don't know, but you do a really good job, and it really would be helpful. So, lots of contact. I don't know. Right, Mike? Do you think?
Do you know any prominent national political Asian leaders? I can't think of any offhand.
Well,
I know in California there's some, but I don't know nationally. Is there anybody?
Well, you'd get Bobby Jindal and Nikki Haley if you want to consider
If you
that.
go to the
maybe.
Indian, right?
those are the ones in Louisiana and South Carolina.
Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese.
There
you know.
are a few.
In the Senate,
Tammy Duckworth, Democrat, but she's not liking it too well, and I can tell she's
We-
getting pretty.
You got a contact. The other thing is Chinese take out enough of a integration between the people?
Serious question.
That's serious.
I think if you guys like Chinese takeout, it helps to build an understanding. But let me get to Mike's questions. Judy Chu, as you know, was the youngest, one of the youngest, I think the first female Chinese American congresswoman, but from Democrats.
And didn't Bush have
Yes.
the secretary of
Mitch McConnell's wife.
yeah, Mitch McConnell's wife. What was her office? I forget her name.
Elaine,
Elaine.
She was
Elaine
Elaine Chao.
Elaine Chao.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, she was.
right. Now
Yeah,
that,
Labor.
Yeah.
Secretary of Labor.
It,
Yeah.
it was a little bit unusual, but you know, of course, it helps that she got married to a white American, and also one of the highest-ranking Republican.
That's right.
But we do not want it to be a tokenism. We want to run on merits. I would vote for any people from any race, as long as good candidate. I don't care where you came from.
That's right.
Amen.
You mentioned that 14, 15, 16 countries identified as this group as Asian American or Asian. Do you guys, or do they see themselves as that collective group, or do they identify individually? And then also, how do they see Americans? Do they see Americans as that collective group, or do they see us as individual groups?
That is a very good question. Actually, if you ask that question to most Asian Americans, they do not. Like, for example, I do not pretty much see myself as Asian American. I would see myself as a Chinese American who get lost in America, coming from Indonesia, which is very confusing. So no, they do not. It is much more localized. The diversity in Asia is so huge. The diversity in the Asian American community is so huge. But there is a central commonality between a few of them. If you look at Asia, the Buddhism and the Hinduism is the predominant religion. And then if you go to the northeast part of Asia, which I mentioned earlier, the Chinese and the Korean and the Japanese, there is the influence of Confucianism. It is in your blood. I could become an evangelical Christian, but it's still part of me. Now, among them is stress education, respect for elders. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So no, they do not see themselves. Second question is, do they see America as just, you know, a homogeneous group? Is that what your question is?
Yes.
Now, if you just come here as an immigrant, that's exactly what you see. Actually, for the first few years, I could not tell from one white guy to another. They just look all the
All
same.
white guys.
I've heard that before. I've heard that
You heard that before. And then when you look at me, it's pretty much the same. It's like, I can't remember this guy. So that, but it's going to change. The American-born Asian American looks at the world differently. So when I talk to my son and my daughter, it's a different world. It's just my son, by the way, is a U.S. diplomat. He's in China right now, and he had served in Vietnam for 2 years, and he's in China now for 2 years, and he will be moving. You know, thank God he got tenure recently. It's very high, you know, very fast-paced promotion. So he looks at the world totally different. He does not call himself Chinese American. He does not even call himself Asian American.
He just uses himself American.
And it's just that I'm American 24/7. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you could.
Going along, actually, he asked part of my question. So there is there's a big difference between the South and the North in the Asian world.
Right.
So my guess is that prior to this last election where 70%
Right.
went Democrat,
Right.
before it was predominantly North Asia, China, Korea, Japan that was over here. Now Southeast Asia came in. Is that why there was such a big change of vote? What
No.
happened in that interim period?
No, let me get back to a little bit. The reason why a lot of Asian Americans were Republican earlier was because the Vietnamese refugees that came to America, immediately they got green card. Within 5 years, they got citizenship and they vote. And they are anti-communist. Now, guess what party are they going to vote for? Republican. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason that there was a strong support for the Republican Party. Now, the other ones that came later, then it's a toss-up. So right now, 80% of Asian Americans do not have ideological base orientation. It's basically pragmatism. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I need a moderator to tell me who's next. Okay? I don't want to offend anybody.
So I'm aware that there's a kind of a takeoff from their questions. I'm aware that there are distinct differences, of course, between the different groups of Asian Americans, and there's prejudice
Yes.
within those groups.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, you said, do they vote as a bloc? I mean, there's a lot of things that are in common, but could they ever vote as a bloc? Or is this internal prejudice, Japanese versus Chinese versus Korean, those kinds of things, will there ever be, I mean, maybe you can't answer this, but would those forces work against a common front to be able to manage or funnel those similar values to a more conservative voting situation?
So you ask good questions. Number one, I believe identity politics is not a good thing. If you vote for certain parties just because the candidate is from your own race, for the first one, we could understand that. That's for historic reason. But if you consistently do that as identity politics, that is not America. Right? Now, we need to have a debate on good ideas. And I believe Republican Party, traditionally and historically, is the bastion for good ideas. the intellectual content in the Republican Party is way above Democrats, historically speaking. Before, then they start losing their mind.
Oh, for sure.
Now, so would I want to have an Asian American voting bloc? My answer is no. Because then you just set yourself up as for a target. Then, and the party just, just throw certain bones at you, and if you are Irish Catholic, then it's automatically Democratic, and if you are, I don't know, Jewish American, it's pretty much Democratic. So they play this game with you, and then in the end, your vote doesn't count. What I want is this, a debate on good ideas. The way right now is what I want. 80% of Asian Americans do not want to be affiliated with any party right now on a consistent basis.
So how do they feel about what's happening right now with the Democrats, with Obama heading everything up? How do they feel? What's going on? Do they see how Obama is leading them down the?
They voted twice in those numbers.
Right. I'm sorry. Let me just quick answer. Obama is a very smart guy. That's called a politics of triangulation or something. You offend certain segments of population, but not enough for them to revolt against you. Okay, he learned it from Clinton. So apparently, because of the core values of family, guess what? And with our immigration background, we want one thing: our families to join us in America, right?
Yes.
It's a natural feeling. So Obama is selling that immigration thing and says, guess what? I'm going to get you more Chinese people to come to America.
Everybody in America.
And actually, they did something that really blows my mind away. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, it's illegal. Is that they allow the Chinese woman, mothers, who is just 1 or 2 months pregnant in China, to come into America and deliver their babies here to become U.S. citizens. And they have no affiliation or love for this country at all. They took their child and then raised them up, bring them to China, whatever. The kids go to 18 or 20 years old. Hey, you're a citizen. Then you could sponsor the mom and the dad to come here. Now, this causes danger. Now, if you mind my reading of the book of Exodus, when the the Israelites was in Egypt, their numbers grew, and it was a different Pharaoh. That caused problem. We should prevent that kind of situation. If you want to be a U.S. citizen, you swear allegiance to this country, you love this country, you pay your tax, and you contribute. Okay, now.
The key word is my gosh, talk about a senior moment. The key thought is affirmative action.
Right.
The point I'm trying to make is that I think we all agree that voting as a bloc is not a good thing. That one of the best ways to counteract this is through equality of opportunity. In that context, I see that affirmative action is a very corrosive and pernicious thing. But is it so heavily ingrained in our current politics that it would become a third rail for the Republican Party to try to either remove it or to de-emphasize it?
Yes, that's a very good concern. Now, Asian Americans, number one, do not ask for affirmative action.
Yes.
Actually, if you want everything in racial quota, then you will not see so many of them at the UC schools. Right now they told me it's like between what, 40% to 50 or whatever. So every place you turn around is an Asian American on campus. So we want to compete on equal footing. That's what we want. However, we sympathize towards those who has historically been underprivileged. There could be a period of historical correction, but affirmative action in America has gone way too long.
Way too long.
Today, almost anybody who wants to get a job should get a job. Anybody who wants to run for public office should have no problem running one. So what's the point?
Yeah.
Let's compete and let's give the best.
I was going to say, as you said, affirmative action in the schools would be anti-Asian.
That's correct.
Because there's so many, in fact, the catalogs of the UC system
Right.
point out that there are a lot of Asians, you know, in the school. So affirmative action would be against what you're trying to do.
That's correct. Mike.
I got a question about how you mentioned equality versus kind of rugged individualism.
Right.
It separates the cultures.
Okay.
And the rugged individualism and the emphasis on liberty is just core Republican.
Yes.
So how do you bridge that gap? I mean, I think that's one of the problems with Jews too, because Jews, it's kibbutzes and socialism, and it's all very communal. And that's one of the big, and we have not been able to overcome that in the Jewish community. So is that going to be the same sort of problem? And with the affirmative action, I know lots of Asians who are fearful of losing spots in campuses, because even though it's illegal in California now, they're playing games at universities where Asians are getting cut out by less qualified. And that could be an inroad for Republicans, if they're smart, with young people, to say, you guys are losing seats. And they worked so damn hard to get there. So I think that's something they could do. But the communal thing, I don't know how you get around that.
First of all, communalism is a good thing when it is applied in good context and when it is channeled into productive means. Individualism is a good thing, again, within the proper context and channeled towards good thing. Now, communalism could lead into says that, well, then nobody bears any individual responsibility. That's on the far side of things. And that's what happens in a welfare system, right? In order to be kind and caring towards the least of us, then we fit in this cycle of dependency. So I guess the thing is that how could the Republican Party or us to think of not necessarily looking at these two as an antagonistic bipolar, but saying that that's the reality of human being, that humanity are complex. We need to be an individual, yet we live in a society. When we build and says that if you as an individual has the greatest opportunity to be the best you can be, and when you do that, then you live in a community where you could give it back voluntarily, not through taxation. Then this is something that builds the gap. A lot of Chinese Americans, they are very generous. They want to build a lot of things, and they contribute a lot. So you appeal to that kind of community involvement. But in order for them to give, they have to make money in the first place.
That's right.
Let them make their money.
This may sound bizarre, but many, many grown white people don't know the difference of the groups. I had a client who was Chinese, his name was Chu, and he would come to the office, it was around December 7th, and he was scared to death. There was a meeting of veterans in the hotel, and they didn't know the difference between him and they considered the Japs who they didn't like, Japanese. And so it's clear that here are these grown men could not tell the difference, and didn't want to know. They saw somebody who was Asian, and they were attacking him verbally. So there's really, they don't understand the difference.
When was this?
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in an Islamic country
Oh.
as a Christian in public school?
I know you're not going to let me get away with that. I was born in Indonesia. I came in 1978 at the age of 18, going to university, getting a master's degree. In Indonesia, there are a few things that is very unique. Number one, on your ID, there's a column, religion,
I've seen that on Obama's,
right?
yeah.
Now in America, you are not allowed to ask people on that. You can ask them when they apply for a job, you can ask them when they apply for school. In Indonesia, it's required. Why? Indonesia was built on the state philosophy of monotheism. Now, it is a very tortured definition because at the founding of the country, the Muslims, which is like close to 90% of them, wants to have an Islamic state. And at that time, it was the Dutch who was the colonial power, wants to give this away, and he says, how could I give that? Indonesia has so many islands. There are certain islands where the northern part is predominantly Christian, and this one will be predominantly Muslim. The next one is predominantly Catholic, and on and on. And it says that you will have communal warfare, just like when they partitioned between Pakistan and India. So a few geniuses of the founding fathers came around and says that, well, not Islamic, not this and that. Let's just say believe in one God. That is a heart. That's one. So the Muslims say, yeah, God is one. And then the Christians say, yeah, God is one. And even the Hindus say, yeah, God is one. It's just one, it's a universe, you know. So everybody just says, yeah, that's totally agreed. So from then on your ID, you have to fill out religion, a column. Now, I grew up a Buddhist, and so that's what I put in, but you have to put in. And when you go to, starting from, I believe, junior high, then they start asking you the questions. You say you are Christians or you are a Muslim or whatever, then they have religious instruction as a class. You will go according to your religion. Now, at that time, some of us do not want to take all this kind of religious instruction.
Yeah.
We just say we believe in Confucianism. So they couldn't figure out what that is. So then you don't have to take a religious class, you know, just enjoy yourself. But kidding aside, the question is, did Obama would have to fill out that column when he was a high school student, or I think high school student, right?
They said he took his
No, he was younger.
father's.
Huh?
He was younger, I think.
Yeah, I think he
Or junior high, or
Yeah,
something
they
like
said
that.
he took his father's religion, which was
mandatory.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah,
that's-
It is mandatory.
yeah.
And in the household record certificate, you have to list down all your names. All the religions must be down there.
It was his stepfather.
Yeah, his stepfather.
Stepfather.
I just saw it on an email the other day.
But he didn't
This
choose.
very thing.
He had to.
Right.
It was his father's religion that
Right.
was put on his ID.
Well, I mean, but he was raised as a little kid, I mean, from both fathers, actually.
Now,
Yeah, both the fathers were Muslims.
Now, again, let me tell you though, the Islam in Indonesia is much more moderate than what you see in the rest of the whole world. Oftentimes, during the Easter or the Christmas, the Muslims group would come to the churches and says that we want to be your God here. We will direct the traffic, we'll make sure everything goes on well. Vice versa, the Christians will do the same. Christians are building their church building, the Muslims will come and help them build, and vice versa. When I was down there, when I drove on the street, they need to build a mosque, so they collect money in the middle of the road. I put in the most amount of money. Now, I'm a very deeply evangelical Christian, but I believe in religious harmony. That you build relationship with people regardless of what their religions are. And that's a good way. So Indonesian Islam is slightly different. But let me get to one thing. This is beyond your question. Is ISIS in Indonesia? It is. The government is preventing it. They are clamping them down. They are shutting off their website, but it just grows like crazy. Now, if you read Revelation, I think Paul will talk about Revelation, so talking about the army from the east.
A million-man army.
Then one thing that we are worried about, if ISIS got their armies from Indonesia, man, we would in deep trouble. Saudi Arabians, they are rich people. There are not too many of them that wants to go down and fight like crazy. But if you go to Indonesia and offer them the equivalent of a salary of a middle class,
They'll go.
they will go.
Yeah.
And then you promise them that you go there, you got 4 bribes, and you got this and that, and then drive them into a radical ideology, they'll go. So that is, as far as I'm concerned, #1 danger in this war. ISIS is drawing people from all around the world like never before. But if they got that tap in from a population that is already Muslim and are poor and are uneducated, and they could be radicalized, that's the danger. All right, any other questions? Okay.
What you just said, would this hold true for the neighboring nation of Malaysia?
Malaysia has similar problems. Malaysia is a little bit unique. It's different from Indonesia. Malaysia is tying up the religion of Islam with the Malay people. Malay people are by constitution Islamic.
I see.
So you're born, you're Islamic. And if you got married, the husband or the wife needs to convert into Islam, not vice versa. You cannot get out of it. They could become Islam. The Chinese Malaysian could become Islam.
Well, what you just said, I think, is very significant because within Malaysia, the island of Penang is almost 100% Chinese and almost 100% non-Muslim.
Right.
But they work in perfect harmony with the rest of Malaysia.
Well, there are tensions all the time, but Malaysian politics is as such that they build coalition. And when they got strong leader, like Mahathir last time, that he was able to draw the Chinese Malaysians vote. He will be able to sell a policy of the things they want. He will sell it to the Indian, Malaysian, and every single group. Now, the danger is that when he could not, then this racial fault line is going to burst.
Just one quick question. How much or at all has Sharia made its way into the civil or criminal law in Indonesia?
Well,
Is any of the Sharia directly put into the codes that govern Indonesia?
Right. First of all, there are probably a few forms of Sharia, or the application of Sharia. One is the extreme form that says that if you commit adultery, stone. If you steal, chop, that kind of stuff. So that's the extreme. That's being practiced in Saudi Arabia today. Now, there are some other forms of Sharia which is much more what we call benign. It says that, hey, it is a Friday, you need to go to mosque. Okay? Actually, if you go to Malaysia, if you do not go to mosque on Friday, they see you, you could be punished. Okay? But it is not brutal.
No, I meant in Indonesia, not Malaysia.
Right. Indonesia, there are certain parts right now that is asking for Sharia to be applied. And the government in a mild form allows them to have the mild form of Sharia to be practiced without necessarily officially acknowledging it. However, here's the deal. A man could marry how many wives in Muslim? Four, right? So you say that, well, that's according to their scriptures, and the Sharia law will apply that you will have 4 wives. Now the problem is that Indonesia is so poor, if the government worker from whatever level start having 4 wives, guess what will happen? He does not have enough salary to pay for all those 4 wives. Wives cost money! So guess what? The government employees in Indonesia are not allowed to have more than 1 wife. Okay? So Sharia would not happen in that way.
Well, even in Sharia, they say you have to be able to take care of them financially.
That's correct, but then it depends on who applied the law, who enforced the law, and all those things. Now, Indonesia is fighting this battle probably as much as we fight everywhere else. The balance between secularization and religious extremism, and whether we could have the best of religions without acceding to the negativity and the extremism that's inherent in all religions and ideologies. Okay, so sometimes I struggle to see whether the fact that Obama was spending some time in Indonesia, does it shape his worldview? Probably most of us says, yeah, especially in his formative years. Did he see a side of Islam which is much more moderate and benign? Probably he did. Now, would that kind of worldview do justice to what we are facing today? And that's the danger, because of what you grew up with and what you see today in reality. Then when he talks about the Islamic religious extremism, then in a few sentences, then he jumped into what? Inquisition and crusades.
Yes.
Now, you could argue from academic point, yeah, there are certain similarities, but within a context of public policy and public discourse, we are not facing the problems with Inquisition today, are we? Or crusades today, right? But we are facing ISIS today, and that is enemy at our doorstep.
Another thing too, if he does come from such a moderate background, then why would he support such heavy radicals if he's not radicalized himself?
His parents and his grandparents were.
That was the leftist
that's
influence, not the
yeah.
Islamic influence.
Yeah, but.
But the thing is who does he support now? He supports the worst of the worst.
He does.
Yes.
Do you see any connection between ISIS and the current conflict in Xinjiang province between the Uyghurs and the Chinese government? Do you see any linkage between the Uyghurs and ISIS?
The problem of the Muslim minority in China is a totally different matter. ISIS, as you know, is a new force. It was a breakout from the Al-Qaeda. It was kind of ignored, going nowhere, and then boom, in order to prove themselves, it's going more radicalized and start doing the chopping of the head. The problems in China with the minorities, by the way, the Chinese has a minority population, which is the largest in the whole world. The minority groups, they are not Han people. Even one of them has the population of 80 million. So that's population of a huge country in itself.
Wow.
Now, I talk to professors from China every year. By the way, they are coming in July, so we could talk another time whether we could have kind of a discourse with them. And some of them are predicting that within the next 20 years, China will go the way of Soviet Union. Break up.
Oh, no.
They have horrible debt problems.
Right.
They're gonna catch up. China is not financially in good shape at all.
Right. Now, there are political problems, but the problem of the racial tensions is so high. In Xinjiang, the Han people, the government shipped them there, basically promised them all the tax-free treatment or whatever, all sort of incentives if you move down there. Now, it is a dangerous zone. A lot of people got killed down there when there's a racial conflict. Now, it is not only the race or the religion that causes conflict. It is money. Xinjiang is a very rich area in minerals, natural gas, oil, and everything else. So when the government took that money, and with the use of state capitalism, make itself very rich, but they do not practice socialism as they tell us. I think when I talk to these professors, I said, here's the deal. America is a capitalist country that practices socialism.
That's right.
And Chinese is a socialist country that practices capitalism, state capitalism. And the state makes so much money, they gave out so little to their own people. America, the state are not allowed to own enterprises, right? And then you have to give out all this money. That's why you go in debts. To get to your point, how does ISIS relate to the Xinjiang? Not right now. But the appeal of ISIS, I think Mike probably you touched on this on your study. The appeal of that is number one, historic. Number two is that it is apocalyptic. Okay, and it draws people and says that you are part of the end time prophecy. Man, I mean that drives him, nuts. It says like, well, could I be part of that? It says yes, you will, and they even pinpoint the cities where the Messiah would come, the Mahdi would come. And it says that the war will start and these things will happen and Israel will be destroyed and They just came up with a whole-blown prophecy. And the reason why it is so appealing is because it claims the historic link of the Caliphate that was lost in the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
And now it says that we are the legal heir of the Caliphate. And this draws a lot of people.
Which is also prophetic.
Right. It is also prophetic from the Christian sense. Okay. All right.
William, that was terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Paul, it's up to you.
Well, I'll throw out a teaser or two, and
Very good, very good.
Maybe give us research to do for next month.
Well, what I have to do doesn't have anything to do with the Book of Revelation. But I do just want to throw some things out there because we're touching on a few things. And I'll just paint the. Prager likes to talk about big picture stuff. He's big guy on the 10 Commandments, and he's pushing that real hard. And I've been feeling that so many months. Man, you know what? There's just something about the 10 Commandments and something about the Torah. I got to read it. I got to study more and more and more. And to hear Prager say all that kind of stuff is pretty powerful. That starts at the beginning. Like I said, I'm just going to throw out the big picture and what's going on and tie it up with what people are calling the end times and the apocalyptic stuff. 3,500 years ago was when God brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, met them there at Mount Horeb, which is in the land of Midian, which is in the present-day Saudi Arabia. Everybody's been looking in the wrong place in the wrong time for years and years and haven't seen anything, but it's all there. He entered into a covenant, promise, an agreement with that nation. That the whole world's barbaric, characterized by slavery and oppression and murder and human sacrifice. Okay, in comes this set of rules and a way of being to this people that says, you're going to be set apart from the rest of the world and carry my name. And this is the foundation of civilization. All civilization is built from that. Life, liberty, property. That's fundamental to the Torah. Pursuit of happiness is probably are interchangeable. We could unpackage them. Without those principles, with those fundamental things, you don't have civilization. You have cultures, and you have great empires, and you have a lot of things like that. But you're oppressed. The people aren't free. They're not. They don't have. They can't pursue their dreams. They can't grow into things. They can't build their world as God wants them to do at the very beginning. So Israel was called out to be different and to carry that name and to tell that message to the whole world. Ever since then, the whole world's hated them. They've been oppressed. They've been attacked because they carry the name of God. Ultimately, the battle's against God.
That's right.
Israel is the apple of God's eye. So you punch Israel and you're trying to punch God. Of course, you're going to get a kick in the teeth right away, usually. But the point is that that's fundamental to why Israel, why the Jews. Part of that covenant promise to Israel that God gave at the very beginning was that there's a lot of things that are going to happen to you. Moses explains this in detail, particularly in the book of Deuteronomy. Chapter 28 for the Jews, I'm sure you've read it and heard of it, and it's an ugly chapter that says, Moses starts by saying, let me tell you what's going to happen to you. And he lays it all out. And it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. If you do good, things are great, and there's a little small about a bit of information. Then it gets into the kind of, this is how it's going to play out. And it ends with, you're scattered to the nations. Yet the promise that God will gather Israel back from the nations is, people think of the end of days as being a Christian concept. The majority of the Scripture, of all the Scriptures, including, particularly in the Hebrew Bible, is devoted to this God gathering Israel back from the nations as He promised to raise them up and establish them as the kingdom of the earth, just like He had always promised. And that's the solution for our world today. And that's where it's headed. 70 years ago, however many years it's been, Israel came back. Just as promised, extensively throughout Isaiah, throughout Jeremiah. If many of you have been to the interfaith discussions, I've documented it's hundreds of pages. It's practically the entire book of Isaiah, and tons of Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Micah and Hosea, and all through the Torah as well. It's an extensive promise that God makes to Israel. That entire time, the term end times is coined by, if you want to say that, by Jeremiah. That's where the term originates from. The end of days, I'm going to gather the nations. In the latter days, God says this, and this is where that terminology comes from. That end time period is characterized as that rebirthing period, which started in 48. And actually, you would say it started to come alive a few decades prior, and you could probably go back and really do some historical analysis and find out when all of this, the dry bones began to kind of come back together, and as Ezekiel describes the flesh coming on and everything coming back, and all of a sudden, at some point at the very end, they come alive. That's been taking place for the last several decades. And here Israel is, and Israel has grown up. And throughout the Scriptures, the imagery of Israel as a baby that God finds struggling in her blood, and he takes her and he washes her and cleans her and raises her up, and finally she's a mature woman. That's what's happened to Israel. Baby Israel was born, and Israel's been struggling and prevailing against her enemies, that God says, I'm going to bring them against you. That's for their judgment, and it's for her prosperity, and she has expanded and grown ever since. And what's coming is, as you can see the pieces on the board, we don't need to go through all the details, is nations are changing. The whole geopolitical map is changing. The globe is changing, and there is a seething animosity toward Israel and the Jews, and it's growing. And you can see it throughout the Islamic world, and bizarrely, but not so much if you understand the background, David Horowitz details a lot of it, the radical left, that socialist movement, and how that seems to have some sort of weird solidarity with radical Islam. You go back into the history of the progressive movement, the past 100 years, they've been laying the foundation of the collapse of this country. It's been rotting from within. People think, okay, well, we're beginning this collapse in our country. It's going to take a few generations for that to play out. The generations have been playing out. This has been going on for some time. The building doesn't collapse slowly. It rots from within, and then boom, and it collapses. And if you look in the last century, all the major radical political changes, whether it be the Russians or the Chinese or Cambodia or in Germany or wherever it took place, there's a build-up to events, and then there's a transformation within a couple of years of the entire civilization. And one could say in World War II, the transformation took place and it had ripple-down effects and it brought the whole world into it. We're approaching those times again. And because of the connectivity of our world with technology, with communications, with transportation, things happen much, much faster than they used to happen.
That's right.
And it's much more tied together. So it doesn't stay localized. It spreads fast. And the world's coming against Israel. We see what our president's doing. We see what he's saying. The stuff that's going on in Iran, we don't have time to get into all the detail, but you're seeing it play out. It's not going to be good. You know what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying. And he spoke as Mordecai during Purim, and everybody who knows the story understands who Mordecai is and what he was trying to warn, what he was trying to say. What's coming to America. And this is, people think it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. There's no end of the world. There's a transition of the nation's power to Israel. Because the nations, in their seething hatred of God, attack Israel and lose badly, just like they've always lost. And they lose terribly. In Israel, it's strange. It's not God, this evil judge who's just beating the hell out of the nations and pouring out his wrath undeservedly. It's the actions of the nations who bring about through their own actions their own judgment through Israel by God working on behalf of Israel. And there's no question that he uses Israel to do it, because I don't have time to go through it, but it's quite explicit, particularly in places like Ezekiel and Zechariah, that he uses the nation of Israel. He actually says the leaders of Israel are going to be like firebrands that just going to set it on fire, because you provoke God, you provoke Israel. I'm going to turn them loose on you. So Israel doesn't lose, and I know it's terrifying to see what's going on in the world, but the world goes through a terrible period, a transition time, and emerges into a beautiful time. But in that transition period, it can get ugly. And so what I wanted to discuss is, what are the implications for Jews and Christians in this country who are supportive of Israel? If our country, our government, and I know it's not the people, we've talked about this, well, Americans are not anti-Israel. No, 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 not the people. But the president is, and his administration is, and increasingly peeling off the mask and showing us more about how anti-Israel they are. If the policies, quick scenario, real fast, perhaps tied in with this Iranian deal. We know that it's not negotiable according to the Iranians that Israel has a right to exist. Israel, they want to destroy that, and no. And the way Obama administration's response to that is, great, this has nothing to do with Israel. Yeah. Huh?
Wrong.
And it obviously has nothing to do with the Americans that are in prison there either, or any of the people of Iran who have tried to stand up against that government. No. It doesn't have anything to do with them. So what's going on is a dirty thing here. It's not so far of a stretch to see if we enter into this weird alliance with Iran that Obama has threatened to go to the Security Council of the UN and use that to enforce against Israel. Everybody knows the Security Council is where the enforcement takes place. It's not the other stuff. The other stuff is just, but that's real. And that means, what does that mean? To back it up, you're going to use the military to do that? I mean, you're taking action against Israel. It doesn't work out well for anybody who's going to do that. But what about for those of us here? If our government is turning anti-Israel, are we going to become, what are we going to be considered?
Well, in the Revelation, it talks about that the saints are handed over to the enemies because of that.
Well, if you want to get